Today we are very excited to have back Viola Buitoni on CRAVE. She's an amazing instructor and food writer who truly celebrates Italian cuisine. Last time she joined us to talk about her book, Italy by Ingredients, which was a huge hit, right? Now Viola is back in her kitchen to share one of her favorite recipes. So what are you making today?
So first of all, thank you for having me back. I always enjoy chatting with you. I enjoy your audience and your studio and your skills. I just love this. So we have picked, Samantha and I spoke, and we have picked a recipe from my book, Italy by Ingredient, and we decided to make something that has a lot of history in my life, that's been kind of ever present, and it is also super easy to make, so that our listeners can and our viewers can maybe look at it and decide that they're going to make it again.
Nice. Are you ready?
I have two cameras for you. Yes, I have two cameras for you. One is you looking at me. The other one is looking looking at the surface on where I'm cooking. Can you see me?
Yes.
So Pescespada dell'Amore means the swordfish of love. What is the story of this dish? The story of this dish is that it's been in my life ever since I have conscious memory. It's a dish that whose first memories date back to when we used to go boating during the summer. My grandfather was an avid boater, and so in the summer we spent lots and lots of lazy morning and afternoons. So this was one of the dishes that got cooked very often, because sailing in the Mediterranean, sometimes you would find fishermen who had just caught a nice pescespada, swordfish, and so we'd buy it and then clean it, and then the helpers, the skippers on the boat would make this like super simple but very flavorful dish. Later on, I remember this in my mother's kitchen. Actually, when my mother got divorced, when my parents got divorced, she started entertaining a lot. That was one of the way that she worked her way through the grief, that she just had these dinners. My father was not big on fish. He's never been. He's more of like an inland kind of guy, was more of an inland kind of guy. And so my mother, almost as if in a reaction, would have these dinners, and all she would make was fish. And this was one of the dishes that would appear very often on the menu. Later on, when I moved to the States, it's definitely one of the dishes that I recreated. And then during my budget unfriendly days, when swordfish sometimes was a little too expensive for me, what I would do is, instead of making steaks, I would make it in cubes like this, so that it would go longer. And then also, if I had some of it left over, I could actually just stretch it into a sauce for pasta. And then what happened is, at some point, as you know, I met my husband. And well, actually, I met my husband in 1986, I think, but we did not get together until 1998. And so when we did, he still lived in San Francisco, I lived in New York, and so we would go back and forth, and this was one of the recipes that I would make for him all the time, because he absolutely loved it. And I made it the first time that he came to spend the weekend with me from San Francisco to New York, and I like to joke around that this is the dish that cinched the deal. You know, it was like my sales pitch to him.
Exactly.
I love it.
Nowadays, it is still one of my family's, including my kids' favorite dish. So I just want to tell you what I'm doing here. May I give you a sense of what's happening in my pots and pans?
Yeah,
All right, you saw me cut the pescespada, and now what I did here is I put a little bit of olive oil and some garlic, and I am just going to wait for the smell of the garlic to come to me. When that happens, I'm going to take the pescespada, which I cubed, and I'm going to put it in here very quickly. All I'm looking for is for it to change color. And by changing color, I don't mean browning. I'm just thinking of going from pink to gray. That is all. And the intention of this is to capture the flavor of the pescespada. So let it do some of its, release some of its juices in the pan. Because once the color is changed on all sides, so as you can see I'm turning it around, and that's going to happen in a matter of like a couple of minutes. Then I'm going to pick it up again. I'm using a skimmer, but you can also use a slotted spoon. This is like my favorite Japanese skimmers. I love it, so I use it all the time. You see that thing, that shape that it has? You can actually go under the fish and pick it up, and I love that. So almost ready. You know the Pescespada gets super stringy. So swordfish, you just give it like a couple of minutes to mash, and all you have is like a super stringy and tough fish. So I'm taking it out. And then I'm using the same super infused oil to make my sauce. The ingredients here are tomatoes, some nice sweet tomatoes, and a little bit of fresh basil. We're going to put some in the sauce while it's cooking, and then the other one on top. And then also I like to put a little bit of dried oregano. This is my addition. It was not in the one that my mother made, but I kind of love dried oregano, and I have this Sicilian dried oregano, which is delicious. Of course, a little salt. Sorry, I'm going off camera, but of course a little salt. And of course a little black pepper, or if you prefer, if you want to make it spicy, with a little bit of peperoncino. And then I'm going to give this maybe 5 minutes, 10, depending on how acidic your tomatoes are. These are pretty sweet tomatoes. They're tiny tomatoes called corbarini. They are from the sides of Mount Vesuvius. And at this point, I'm going to cover it, turn it down, and give it the 5 minutes that it needs to cook. And I would love, if you let me, to read some of this recipe that I was talking about. May I?
Yes.
Here, I found it.
Okay.
Starts like this, and I'm going to read you the head note, not the recipe itself. What I say is that the emotional dimension of this dish is infinite in my life. In the long ago summer lull of a boat, its fragrance wafting from below deck is the only thing that could keep my siblings and me still for more than 5 minutes. In my teen years, he finds a winter home in my newly divorced mother's kitchen. As I enter adulthood and move to New York, I tinker with it in a tiny kitchen where with time the swordfish changes some and eventually gains its name as a witness to the beginning of my love for my husband. I still remember that moment. Leonard Cohen was billowing about a man tied to a kitchen chair, and I recall panicking that my too small for a chair kitchen wouldn't be big enough to tie him down. I remember his hands between me and the stove, my clean hair caressing his nostrils. I remember that I never wanted that moment to end. It didn't. 22 years later in San Francisco, this brightly hued combination of tomato, capers, and olives over swordfish is still the best loved dish in my repertoire by both my husband and my son. Can we take a look at the swordfish again?
Oh my gosh. This is making me so hungry.
I know, abbiamo un po' di fame. We're hungry right now. Last time you brought food for us.
Yes.
This time you can't.
I did, remember? Yes, I cannot.
Yeah, for Pasqua. Are there any modifications you have made for the original recipes? And if so, why?
So I have, yes, one of the modifications is that I use both basil and dried oregano. So basil is very much a summer thing, but here in San Francisco we're lucky enough to find it year round because there always is sun somewhere around the Bay Area. And dried oregano was more common when it was done on a boat. Dried oregano was more common because on a boat it's very difficult to have fresh herbs. So I decided I couldn't choose whether I liked the fresh basil or the dried oregano, so I just put both of them. The other thing that I do, and this is a modification that I made in all of my dishes, I'm going to be putting in olives shortly. You can see that my olives are well rinsed, and also they are hanging out in water. And the reason why I like to do that is because olives have, they sit in brine, and the brine has a very meaningful flavor, which is going to impact the final result of your dish. So whenever I use olives, I always rinse them very, very well.
So what advice would you give someone making this dish for the first time? It looks beautiful, for the first time, what advice you will give?
So this is a dish that you cannot mess up. I would say that swordfish is a great match for it, but you can use other fish, right? You can use other fish, and so I would say the first time make it with swordfish because swordfish is perfect for it, and you get a good idea of what it needs to be like. Once you get a good hand at it, then you can start using other fish. So I've done this with seafood, like with shrimp. I've done it with tiny calamari. I've also done it with sea bass, with tilapia. So really you can do anything. The other advice that I give anyone who makes this dish is make more, because you're going to love having the leftovers. Either you eat them just as leftovers, or you mash them with a fork and put them on your pasta. So this is ready, and this is the biggest trick that we're going to learn today. So I'm going to take my pescespada, which is not fully cooked yet. Remember, we just kind of like did the sides of it. And I'm going to put it in the super hot sauce, mix it so that the sauce covers it, and I am going to cover it. And I'm going to turn off the heat. I'm going to turn off the heat, and I'm going to let the steam and the hot sauce cook my swordfish. And the swordfish is going to stay incredibly tender. And this is the second biggest modification that I brought to this dish. And this is, it's actually, I have to admit, it's a French technique that I learned with shrimp, where you just put them in boiling water and then you turn it off. And I said, oh, let me apply to the pescespada. And it actually works incredibly well. It needs to stay about 15-20 minutes, and then it's ready. But even if it stays longer, it is not going to get tough.
Where people can find your book, Viola?
Anywhere books are sold, of course. You can, if they don't have it, make sure you order them and you let them know how much you want them to carry the book. But anywhere books are sold, be it my preference, which is a small local bookstore, or even online. I like to support bookshop.org, which is a platform for small independent bookstores around the country. So I have the garnish here. I'm going to put it next to the phone so that you can see. Let me move my hands where it needs to be. Sorry, I'm having trouble. There you go. So do you see that I have, yes, I have flowers in here. So I'm using basil flower. I think we all grow up being told, oh, you should not use the flowers of the herbs if they're flowers and they're bad. My mother always maintained that flowers are where all the flavor concentrates. So when she cooked, she always used everything of the herbs in any kind of herb that she would use. So to this day, I still use the flowers, and I love to use them for garnish. So if I get a bunch of herbs that is flowering, I will save all the flower tips and I will use them for garnishing. So that's what I did here. I saved some tiny, tiny leaves and the flowers. And this is going to go on top of the swordfish before I serve it.
This is I can't even explain. This is exactly like...
Yeah, and is just
the food I would eat.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so hungry right now.
And also simple, and it's very easy to, like, it's very easy to make, actually. It's not complicated,
Not
everybody,
at all.
yeah, right? That's what I like about Viola book. There's so many wonderful recipes, and they're like, everybody can learn to make that.
That's my mission as an instructor and as a food writer. I'm a cooking instructor, as you know. And then from instructing people how to cook, then I kind of developed into a food writer. And my mission in what I do is actually to make sure that people find a way to bring the everyday art of Italian cooking into their lives. And so none of my recipes are terribly complicated, because I always think of someone coming home after a full day of work, after having to deal, with kids, with traffic, and I don't want them to feel like, oh my God, now I get home and I have to spend an hour and a half on dinner. My idea is that you spend no more than like 20-30 minutes on dinner.
Yeah. What is the best compliment you have ever received for these dishes?
I mean, the best compliment, there are many, I have to say, at the risk of sounding modest, I do get a lot of compliments for my work, so that's very nice. But the ones that I like more are the ones that are, that praise not specifically any given dish, but what I do in the classroom and with my book. And I've had quite a few people looking at me in the eyes and say, you've changed the way I cook. And that to me is just, exactly what I want to do. I want to change the way people cook, and I want to make it accessible, easy, want to demystify it in a way, you know, not have cooking be this kind of like aspirational thing, but really like an everyday thing that everybody can fold into their living. And so if that's what I have obtained, that's what I have yielded by teaching and by writing and by talking about food, then that's the best compliment I can receive.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Can we see what's going on in your pan?
Let's see what's going on in the pot. It looks very beautiful. Let me get a fork.
No, I wish I could.
Yeah.
Like I wish I could taste test through the screen. It looks incredible.
You look incredible. Yeah.
So it's actually, I'm going to cut one piece to see if it's ready, but I'm pretty sure that it is. And it actually is, because if you look at it inside, it's very tender, but it's all white. Can you see it? Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm also going to try it. It's delicious.
Wow.
So it's tender, it's not stringy, it's very flavorful. It does need a little bit of salt. Of course, salt is subjective, right? If you think it's salty enough, then that's fine. For my taste, it needs a little bit more of salt, and I also know that for my husband's taste tonight, that's what he's going to eat, because I'm out for dinner, so when I go out for dinner, I always leave him his favorite dishes.
Yeah, of course.
I know it's going to need a little more salt.
Here at Crave, we love talking about passions. Besides
Yes.
your career, what another passion of yours?
Well, you know, I have many. I love clothes, that's one thing. Fashion is a big passion for me. I take a lot of pleasure in not just clothes for myself, but also in dressing friends. I have friends who will only go shopping for clothes if I go along with them. I have a cohort of friends for that, and I always tell them where the sales are or where they should go. And not everybody can go to the same stores, right? These different stores cater to different type of women, to different tastes, so that is a passion of mine. Another passion is flowers. I love like arranging flowers, buying flowers, looking at flowers. So that's another thing that I really enjoy. Another passion of mine is people. I really do love friendship and people and interactions and building a community or different communities that can where you can foster the different passions that you have. So, you know, I do have friends who actually mostly go around in their sweats and they think that fashion is stupid. That doesn't mean they're not wonderful people, and I can still hang out with them. I just don't, you know, I just share other things of my life. So that's a different community than the one that really loves to go shopping with me. What I don't have is a community that doesn't love eating. So everybody in my cohorts, all my different communities, absolutely loves eating and loves gathering around the table. So I'm going to plate it. I love to plate this on a dish that really shows it off. So I generally put it like in a white dish or a light color dish, because that way you really see all the beautiful colors. And I want to talk about olives for a second, because when I cook with olives, you remember I was talking about the brine? I mostly cook with olives that have the pits in, because if they don't have the pits in, then the brine not only gets in on the inside, outside, but also gets in on the inside. So I actually leave the pit on in these olives. Just make sure that if you decide that you want to leave the pits in, just let the people who are going to eat the Pescespada know. And then we take these beautiful flowers and kind of put them all around, and the little leaves. And that's it. Ready.
Wow. I will do the scarpetta, right? The scarpetta with this?
Absolutely. Yes.
You guys know what is scarpetta?
Actually,
Go ahead.
so the scarpetta is when you have something left over and then you take a piece of bread and you kind of sop up the sauce. I actually, one of the ways in which I serve this is with toasted bread. You could serve it with like 2 nice slices of toasted bread on the side.
Viola, for those people who love wine, what kind of wine you will have with this kind of recipes?
This really calls for a super dry wine, like very easy to drink, very fresh, the kind of wine that you almost drink because you're thirsty. Do you know what I'm talking about? Sometimes you're like, oh, I'm super thirsty. I would love like an iced glass of wine. So that's kind of what you're looking for. So a Vermentino would be good, or like a Falanghina. Very, very, very cold, very iced, and you just have a little bit on the side with it. And if you have it with bread, it kind of brings brings everything together very beautifully. The wine, the tomato, everything.
Fantastico,
Wow.
veramente buon appetito.
I wish I was over there
Right,
to eat
me
it.
too. Next time.
Next time we have to.
Viola, we need to have you
We're
back.
going to have, yes, we need to do a regular cooking
Yeah.
segment on
Regular.
on Crave, I
Yes.
I
think.
might have you very soon.
Yes, please.
Yeah, very soon. Buon
Thank you.
appetito. Viola, grazie tantissimo. Thank you so
Grazie
much.
mille.
Grazie.
Always a pleasure to chat with you.